Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. If you are already a subscriber, thank you so much for coming back. And if you're new here, welcome. My name is Francia, and on this channel, we do a little bit of everything, but lately I have been interested in true crime. And if you are interested as well, I hope you hit your subscribe button and your notification bell so that you always know when I upload. I originally did not want to do today's story because there are children involved, but I decided to do it just to show you the ridiculousness of the justice system and how it literally exists everywhere. The police was so sloppy and negligent in this case that I am inclined to believe that maybe they were involved somehow. This world is corrupted everywhere, okay? And today we're going to Europe, Belgium to be exact, and we're going to talk about this Belgian criminal who became notorious for his involvement in a series of heinous crimes during the late 1980s and 1990s. He was convicted of kidnapping, sexually abusing, and murdering several young girls between the ages of 8 and 19. He didn't act alone though. We're going to talk about his accomplices later on, and you will be shocked as to who one of them was. His crimes shocked Belgium and led to widespread outrage and public protests, particularly regarding the failures of law enforcement and the justice system in handling the case. I do feel like this case was really more about the failures, the mishaps, and the negligence of the justice system more than anything else. It's not like it was insignificant what happened to the victims, but like the way they handled everything was just so crazy. Okay, so who exactly are we talking about? Let's get into it. This guy's name is Marc Dutroux. Disclaimer, so like I said, this case took place in Belgium. They mostly speak French in this part of Europe. So some of these names are easier for me to say in English, but a lot of them I will have a French accent because, your girl speaks French, okay? Okay, enough with the corniness. Let's go. Marc Paul Alain Dutroux was born on November 6, 1956 in Ixelles, Bruxelles. He was the eldest of 5 children born to Victor Dutroux and Janine Lowens. Both of his parents work as teachers, and Mark would later claim that they abused him, although it did not say what kind of abuse, but they're always abused. In 1972, his parents got divorced or separated. It wasn't clear, and Mark stayed with his mother until after he graduated high school at 16. And then he moved out, and it was said that he worked as an electrician and a male prostitute servicing man. So homeboy was out there living his life as a gay man just to make money. Okay, no judgment, but I'm judging just a little bit, because he didn't identify as bi or nothing. He's just, or maybe he was, or maybe he was still in the closet, but I don't know. Still judging a little bit. A few years later, in 1976, Mark met and married his first wife, Françoise Dubois, with whom he had 2 children. The couple would later divorce in 1983, with Françoise claiming that Mark would abuse her and the children and that he had several affairs. Homeboy was a serial cheater, okay? He just did not know when to stop with these women. And one of the women that he cheated with, her name was Michelle Martin, who became his second wife and with whom he had 3 other children. Michelle was also a petty criminal who was in and out of prison. Perfect couple. Which is where she and Mark met and also where they got married. Like I said, perfect couple. Mark would be convicted of petty crimes later on, like assault, dealing drugs, trading stolen cars, and things of that nature. And then Mark was like, wait a minute, I could make a little bit more money. Let me just become pure evil. Okay, so he decided to gather up his posse and take his little crime situation to a whole nother level. His alleged partners in crime were his wife, Michelle Martin, Michel Lelièvre, Jean Van Petegem, I cannot say this guy's name, Michel Nioul, and Bernard Weinstein. The first round of his crimes involved him, his wife Michelle, and their friend we're just gonna call this guy Pete because I cannot say his name, and his friend and their friend Pete. Together, between 1985 and 1989, they would abduct and sexually assault 5 girls, but thankfully they did not unalive them. That is a blessing, okay? Because we all know how these things usually go. Mark would say that it was a lot of work to try and pick up women the right way, and that it was easier to abduct, rape, and release them. So let me get this right, my man. You are way too tired. It's just way too much of an inconvenience to talk to women your age and get them to either accept or reject you. So you then go after little kids, like young children. And another thing, you have a freaking wife. You have a wife, sir. You're a married man. What the hey? Just sick, man. Anyways, on June 7th, 1985, Mark and his partner abducted 11-year-old Sylvie. On October 17th, 1985, they abducted 19-year-old Maria. And on December 14th of 1985, Mark abducted a girl named Axel. She later testified and told the police that Mark wasn't alone and that Pete was part of it as well. Pete would later corroborate Axel's story, admitting to helping Mark and Michelle in their abductions. 4 days later, on December 18th, 1985, Mark and his friends also abducted 15-year-old Elizabeth. It was said that Pete told police that Mark had filmed Elizabeth naked and took pictures of her. Nasty man. On January 17th, 1986, they abducted 18-year-old Catherine. Fortunately, in February of 1986, Mark, his wife Michelle, and their friend Pete were arrested. They were able to easily locate them because Pete here was a blabbermouth and he told the girls a whole bunch of personal information, which would end up being very useful in the investigation later on to help find them. On April 26, 1989, the three were found guilty and received their sentence. Pete was sentenced to 6.5 years and Michelle got 5. Now, because Mark was guilty of other charges as well, he was sentenced to 13.5 years in prison. And that was the end. I wish it was, or at least it should have been, because then we wouldn't be here. But no. While Mark was in there, he convinced health professionals that he was not all the way there mentally so that he could get disability from the government. And then he told them that he had issues sleeping at night. So then they prescribed him sleeping pills, which he would then later use to sedate his victims. And as you may have caught on by now, in every single one of those stories, there is a dum-dum. And in this one, Minister of Justice Melchior Waithlet was the dum-dum who thought it was a great idea to release Mark after only serving 3 of his 13.5-year sentence, against the advice of prosecutors and psychiatrists who examined Mark in prison and said he was an extremely dangerous psychopath. But no, let's not listen to people. Let's do whatever we want at the expense of the community. And exactly what did the psychopath do when he got out? He used the money the government was giving him. Okay, he was getting $1,200 a month for disability. And he used that money to purchase several houses, 7 to be exact, where he would keep his victims. And one of them in particular, he built a dungeon, and that's where he kept most of them. The guy wasted no time. As soon as he got out and got his house prepared, he decided that it was time to re-up his little kidnapping business. And this time, he didn't just grape and release them. No, he kept them captive and unalived some of them. Should have just kept him in there. On June 24th, 1995, Mark and Weinstein abducted 2 8-year-old friends, Julie and Melissa. He took them to his dungeon where he repeatedly abused them. You know, he did stuff to them and then recorded the whole thing. Can you imagine? One of my children just turned 8 and I'm looking at him. It's just so innocent. They're little children. They don't know anything. What a sick bastard. And this is why I feel so strongly about this early release crap. I feel like there are some crimes, if you commit them, then you have to stay in there. It doesn't matter who you've become since you've been in there, you're going to need to thug it out. If you unalive people, or if you mess with little kids and you got 50 years, 20 years, 60 years, you are going to sit in there for those years, because there is no early release, or there should be no early release if you commit any of those crimes. You should not be unaliving people, and you should not be messing with little kids. His behind should have stayed in there for the whole 13 and a half years. And if that would have happened, then the children would not have gone through what they went through, and they would have been here right now. Oh, I'm so angry. This is just so heartbreaking. Oh. And since this guy did not know how to stop, just 2 months later, on August 23rd of 1995, he picked up 2 teenage girls, 17 and 19. And because I absolutely cannot say their name in English or French, I am going to just call them by their initials, which are AM and EL. And since they already had the 2 girls in the dungeon at that house, they put AM and EL in another bedroom in the house, and they chained them there. And later on, they drugged them and took them to a different house. And it was said that once they got there, it didn't say why, it didn't say how, but they unalived the 2 girls. Some sources said they were unalived and then buried in his backyard, and others said he drugged them and buried them alive. But bottom line is, for no reason, he just unalived them. Just despicable. Now, the same Bernard Weinstein, one of Mark's accomplices, he got into it with Mark over a stolen car and some money or something like that, and Mark ended up torturing him to get him to tell him where the money was. It's not funny, but he drugged his food and he put hose clamps around his testicles. Listen, I know that must have not felt nice, but I am not upset, because why are you messing with little girls? Like, he should have just cut it off to begin with. Yeah, I'm not mad about that. After he got the information that he needed, he buried the guy alive on his property. Yeah, like I said, they called him a dangerous psychopath for a reason, and he should not have been released. You'd think they know by now. So because of the stolen car, Mark was a wanted suspect, and on December 6th of 1995, he was arrested for car theft and was sentenced to 3 months in jail. Now, remember, at that time that Mark was arrested and sent to jail, those 2 little girls were still in that dungeon. He stated that while he went to prison, the girls were still alive, and he had left specific instructions with his wife to feed them every time they ran out of food. But I guess Michelle here did not get the assignment. She did not do what she was supposed to do, and she didn't feed the girls, and they literally starved to death. Oh my gosh. Mark tried to say that when he returned home from prison on March 20th of 1996, the girls were still alive, but experts said that there's no way they would have made it without food for this long. There's no way possible. He was gone for 3 months. Ain't no way. Now, Michelle, I'm so angry. This woman is just, Michelle is going to fix her top lip and her bottom lip together to say that she didn't feed the girls because she was afraid to go down to the dungeon. Are you kidding me? Are you freaking kidding me right now? Y'all chained them down there, but you're afraid to go there to feed them? You don't own a lighter, a match, nothing, a flashlight? Make it make sense, Michelle. Make it make sense. They had dogs. She fed the dogs. Pit bulls. But then she was afraid of the dark. You let the poor children starve to death because you're afraid of the dark? Oh my goodness. 2 minutes. I just need 2 minutes with Michelle. I have so many names going through my head right now I could use to describe her, but I can't use those on here. And the Lord would not be too happy with me using those, so I'm just gonna not. But, oh girl, I want to fight you. And I can't even fight. I would test my fighting skills, or lack thereof, on Michelle. Just give me 2 minutes in a back alley with her. Dumb. Mark buried them next to Weinstein's body. Oh my gosh. They were only 8 years old. Only 8 years old, and y'all tortured them and starved them to death. Freaking monsters. Gosh, I'm so angry. So now that is 5 bodies so far, and you would think that he would stop by now, but no. On May 28th, 1996, Mark and his other accomplice, Le Lièvre, that's the guy he seemed to use the most to kidnap these young children, they kidnapped a 12-year-old Sabine, took her to his dungeon where he repeatedly did stuff to her. And I'm sure he probably filmed as well. It didn't say, but I think he allegedly may have filmed her. On August 9, 1996, the pair kidnapped a 14-year-old Leticia as she was walking home from her local swimming pool. But this time, thankfully, a person did see the van and they were able to get a partial license plate and contacted the police. With that information, they were able to arrest Mark and his 4 other accomplices. They then searched his houses, which didn't really come up with anything. I don't know what was wrong with these people's searching skills, but they didn't find anything. But then a couple of days later, Mark and Le Lièvre, they confessed to everything. Mark led the police to his basement, like the dungeon where he kept the people, and they found Sabine and Leticia, and they were still alive. Police then was taken to another one of his houses where they found the bodies of the 2 8-year-old little girls. Oh my gosh. And the Weinstein guy. And then he took them to another property where they found the other 2 teenage girls, AM and EL. They also found hundreds of pornographic videos and a whole bunch of homemade adult movies with Mark and his wife. Mark and his posse were arrested in 1996, and they wouldn't be tried until 2004. That's crazy. That's a long time. I don't feel like doing math right now, but that is a long time. This trial sadly revealed disturbing details about his actions and the circumstances surrounding the investigation. The case raised significant concerns about systemic issues in the Belgian police and judicial systems, leading to calls for reforms. When I tell you this investigation was crazy, it was so botched, and that's why I, along with some of the other folks back then, strongly believe that this man was not acting alone. He was most likely allegedly working with other folks. There were definitely some powers that were pulling strings, because there were too many instances where this guy wasn't dealt with properly. For example, in 1995, his own mother wrote to the prison. She wrote a letter to tell police to not, that was the first time, she told them to not release this man early. That was her own son. She said, do not release him early. They ignored her. Then she wrote again another letter to let them know that her son kidnapped 2 little girls and he was keeping them in his house. They did nothing. I'm also thinking, like, if the mom knew this information, I don't know how old and frail she was, but I'm saying, like, could you have not done anything? I don't know. Maybe go grab them and bring them to the children. Or maybe she feared for her life that her son could have done something to her. I don't know. I was just thinking. I'm not in her shoes, so I'm not going to try to judge, but I just feel like if you know for sure that your son was holding these kids, why wouldn't you just, I don't know, grab some muscles and go, unless she feared for her life? Because again, I say this man was not working alone. This is not a solo operation. It was not. So maybe the mom feared for her life. We're just gonna go with that. Try not to judge her. Even with the tips that they got, it took them 14 months before they finally arrested him on those particular kidnapping charges. Now, he was arrested on other charges, like a car theft situation, and they searched his house. It was around the time that the girls were still in there. It was said that they brought a locksmith with them to his house, and while they were moving around looking for whatever car related thing that they were looking for, the locksmith told them that he heard a noise. It sounded like a little girl screaming, and they told the locksmith that it must be coming from the neighbors. Sir, can you just stop for a second and try to hear where it's coming from? These people, they didn't even investigate or nothing. Didn't pause, did nothing. They just told the locksmith. They just brushed it off and told the locksmith it must be coming from outside, and they just left. They could have found them and they could have saved them. They would have made it out. That is crazy. I'm thinking it was on purpose. They just did not want to investigate this whole thing on purpose, because if you have a tip that two little girls are missing and this guy was the name that was given to you as to who was holding the little girls, and you're searching this particular person's house and you may or may not have heard screaming, wouldn't you investigate it? These people were in on it. They were in on it. They saw ongoing construction in this man's house, and then he just told them it was for a new drainage system. They believed him. They found a lot of videotapes that they never even looked at, and some of them had like footage of his dungeon that he was building, and then others just magically disappeared. They just magically vanished. We'll never know what was on those tapes and who stole them. Who stole them? Somebody's trying to cover something up. Oh my gosh. There's definitely a ring going on. Pedophile ring. And it was even said that the officers that conducted the search, they got promoted. For not trying to investigate the screams of the little girls, for not looking at the videotapes, and for stealing some of those videotapes. That's why I think they got promoted, not because they were terrific at their job. My goodness, somebody did not want things found. I will never say it enough. He was not alone. I really don't think so, because this was so botched. Because you mean to tell me, okay, let's break it down. You mean to tell me, there's a couple of girls missing. Okay, there's this person who was supposed to have been a suspect. His mother told you he was holding the girls. You arrested him on a whole separate charge, went to his house. Somebody tells you they heard voices, like two little girls screaming, and you tell them that it must be coming from the neighbors. You see all the construction happening. You believe whatever was told to you. You got a whole bunch of tapes that you don't look at, and you mean to tell me that this was all a coincidence? No. And then there were also other hints that they received that they never properly followed up on. Like, Mark had offered money to a police informer to provide him with little girls, and he told him that he was constructing a cell, like a dungeon, in his house, and no one cared to follow up. No one. And there was one judge who had a little bit of a common sense, and he was the only one who did some investigating that got those last two girls out alive. They decided to let him go, claiming that he was no longer impartial because he attended a fundraising dinner that was held for the victims' families. Excuse me? No, somebody wanted him gone because he was actually investigating, and nobody wanted that. Nobody wanted to solve these cases because they all were in on it. Oh my gosh. And so the public was like, oh heck no, enough is enough, and rightfully so. And they demanded police reform and a justice system reform. And on October 20th of 1996, more than 350,000 people took to the streets of Belgium, to protest against the justice system and everything that was going wrong in the investigation. This protest was called the White March, and they demanded better, and I am with them. I know it was in the past, but I agree is what I'm saying. Although a judge did agree that the police was sloppy and everything that happened with the Mark investigation shouldn't have happened, and that they in fact needed a police reform, a justice reform and whatnot, that did not stop them from being dum-dums. No, they were allowing this man to leave the prison and go work on his case files. I don't know how that's a thing. I don't know if it's just a thing in Belgium or if it was a thing back then, but why was he leaving the prison to go work on his case files? Like, was the lawyer not allowed to come talk to him at the prison? Because from what I know or what I've seen, you are in jail, and your lawyer, if they have questions or if they need to discuss something with you, they go to the prison to talk to you. Like, was that not a thing? Why did he have to leave? What is this? Anyways, during one of his little trips, he overpowered one of the officers and he escaped for like a couple of hours. They got him back, but he freaking escaped. Okay. I'm still thinking that this wasn't a coincidence because I read somewhere that homeboy was not handcuffed. He was not in handcuffs while he was being moved from one place to another. I'm thinking they wanted him to escape, but the public was on their neck. They could not even afford to do that, but they wanted him to escape. I cannot say enough when I tell you this case was crazy. It was said that investigators were not working together, like prosecutors and detectives. They were not working together. They weren't sharing tips. They would not share evidence. It was just nuts, okay? For example, there were countless of hairs found in the dungeon where the girls were being held, and when the lead investigator asked for the hairs to be tested for DNA, the judge refused. What? What do you mean no? Why would you not want the hairs tested? Do you have a strand in there that belongs to you, sir? Make it make sense. Are we not trying to solve this case? It was said that there were other judges that left their positions because their names were associated with some of the suspects. There were police officers that were arrested on suspicion of having connections to Mark and his little crime operation. It was crazy. It was so bad that they decided to investigate the investigation of the Mark case. Okay, there is a 17-month long investigation about the case. I don't know how else to phrase it, but Parliament was investigating the investigation of the Mark case, and they concluded that even though Mark did not really have accomplices in high positions, he did, however, profit from corruption, sloppiness, and incompetence by the police investigators. Yeah, he did, and we all know that by now. However, all's well that ends well, because a whole bunch of craziness, sloppiness, questionable situations, and about 7.5 years later, we finally had a trial, which began on March 1st of 2004. It was a trial by jury, and there were up to 450 people that were called to testify. So you know it was about to be a long behind trial. And it was. During their testimonies, Mark claimed that he was not in charge of things and that he was a low dog in a powerful pedophile network. I knew it. We all knew it. The public called it, which is why they marched, okay? We all knew it. So you weren't telling us nothing new, homeboy. He further added that Michel Nioul was the one calling the shots for the abductions. And he continued to say that even though he participated in some of the in the abductions and the raping and torturing and videotaping some of the girls, he did not unalive anyone except for Bernard Weinstein. And he unalived Bernard Weinstein because he claimed that Bernard let the girls die. But I'm like, sir, didn't you say you give instructions to your little wife here? But anyways, I digress. He claimed that the Nioul guy did the unaliving. Like, the Michel Nioul was the one that was getting rid of the girls and not him. He also said that he created the dungeon because, I quote, "I wanted to create a hiding place to spare them from being sent to a prostitution ring," end quote. And I will say that I do believe this statement. I don't agree with this man, grabbing these little kids and doing stuff to them for and selling them to the highest bidder. But I do believe this statement that he probably did create that dungeon to protect them, because all the hairs found in his dungeon meant that he probably had the customers come to him to mess with the little girls down there instead of giving the little girls away to be passed down to that prostitution ring. Which is why I will again say till I'm blue in the face, he was not acting alone. And a lot of people believe that as well. In a statement made by a senator named Marie, she said, and I quote, "Stupidity can't be the only explanation, but there is also corruption involved. Mark must be a friend of somebody important, or he's being protected because he is known to be a police informant," end quote. She also claimed that Mark was not a true pedophile, like he was being made out to be, and he claimed that he started doing that because he discovered that men paid a lot of money for little girls, so he started kidnapping them. No shirt. Psychiatrists who also evaluated Mark said the same thing, that he did not fit the profile of a pedophile. and that he was kidnapping these little girls because of the money. But, sir, where are your morals? It still doesn't absolve him because you still chose to make that decision to go kidnap these little girls to make money. I don't know, unless somebody was like holding a gun to your head and telling you to go do stuff, you still made that decision for your own personal gain. You wanted money. You had no morals. You wanted money, you psycho. I don't know who was pulling his strings, but all the hairs found in his dungeon also proved that other people were going down there to mess with the little girls and probably paid him a lot of money because homeboy was not broke. He had money, okay? Mark's lawyer even said in a statement during the trial, quote, "I speak not only as a lawyer, but also as a citizen and a father. He was not the only devil." Out of the 6,000 hair samples that were found in the basement cellar where some of the victims were being held, 25 unknown DNA profiles were discovered where people in that cellar that were not now accused. End quote. So, yeah, like I said, he wasn't acting alone, much like Diddy, and they tried to cover it up as much as they could and hold off on arresting him as long as they could, just like Diddy. But Cassie's case, I mean, the two girls they found alive just exposed their whole entire little operation, and they needed to make an example out of someone to give the public the illusion of justice. But we all know Mark wasn't the only devil, like the lawyer said, just like Diddy. In her testimony, Michelle, the wife, she claimed that Mark had convinced her to help him kidnap girls and rape them because he told her that it was easier to have affairs this way because then he could have more time to spend with Michelle. And she bought it. How about you tell your husband that you're not going to stand for him cheating on you, let alone helping him, and with little girls? Girl, who hurt you? She also claimed that Mark and Weinstein kidnapped the two 8-year-old little girls and that Mark had in fact unalived Weinstein. It's a whole bunch of sick people, man. A whole bunch of sick people. Whew. And finally, on June 14th of 2004, after a 3-month-long trial, the jury went into deliberation. Thank God. And 3 days later, they were back with a verdict. Mark, Michelle, the wife, and Luliev were found guilty on all charges. Thank goodness. But sadly, they were not able to reach a verdict in Neil's case, you know, the guy who Mark claimed is responsible for the unaliving of the girls, due to a lack of evidence. But I have a feeling that he was a participant, if not really the brains of the operation, because in an interview, he told a journalist that he was the monster of Belgium, and he would like touch the journalist and tickle her in a weird way. And then he told her that he would never be convicted of anything because they will never find anything on him. He was basically untouchable. He was boasting about it, so I think he had a little something to do with it. Ugh, can't stand them. For their sentencing, they would have gone for the death penalty, especially in Mark's case, but it was no longer a thing in Belgium as of 1996. So on June 22nd, 2004, Mark was sentenced to life in prison, which is the maximum that he could receive at the time. Michelle received 30 years and Luliev received 25 years. Although they didn't have enough evidence to convict the Newell guy of kidnapping and murder, he was convicted on drug-related charges and received 5 years in prison. I feel like that's not enough because I feel like he was definitely involved, but at least that's something, you know, his cocky behind. This I'm not too happy about, but Michelle was paroled 16 years into her sentence and was released into a convent. Later on, after the convent was sold, a judge had created an apartment out of his farmhouse. A judge! He created an apartment out of his farmhouse, and that's where Michelle now lives. Now, as you can imagine, the people and the victims' family members were not happy with that decision, and neither am I. Like I said, if you are involved in unaliving people or messing with little kids, there should be no paroling you early. But it is what it is. Even though I think there is a small possibility that she was manipulated by Mark, but again, unless he was holding you at gunpoint or, threatening you, I don't see why she allowed herself to be used in this way. It's not like somebody is making you rob a bank or you're being coerced into, stealing candy from a store. These are children that you're messing with. These are children you're messing with. I don't care how much of a model citizen she became in there. Thug it out. Thug it out. Finish out your whole entire sentence. Don't unalive people and don't hurt children. That's it. Just be a decent human. Gosh darn it. Mr. Sir over here, Mark, he tried to appeal. On February 14, 2013, he asked to be released on an ankle monitor and claimed that he was no longer a dangerous person, but thank God they denied his request. So he is currently serving his time in solitary confinement in the prison of Nivelles. I love this for him. He does not need to be paroled ever. And if they ever do parole him, I will march into Belgium. I will start a riot, a solo riot, because he's not to be released early. Unless, there could be something that could be arranged if he is willing to snitch and give up some of these other people that he was working with. But other than that, he needs to rot in there. He needs to rot in there. That's the only way. That is the only way. Otherwise, I'm marching. I don't even know where Belgium is, but I'm marching. Best believe. Also, a little fun fact, but not really. I read somewhere that this case was so bad and people were so disgusted with what this man did. A large group of people with the last name Dutroux applied to get their name changed. It's not funny, but I feel you, because I'm not sharing a last name with this monster. I would have done the same thing. I would have changed my last name too, because what? No. Imagine everywhere you go, are you related to Marc Dutroux? No. I would have done the same thing. So kudos to y'all for changing y'all last name. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the story of Marc-Paul Alain Dutroux. His case had a lasting impact on Belgium, influencing public perception of safety and the protection of children, as well as prompting changes in laws and procedures related to child protection and criminal investigations. And I hope those changes stuck and that they never had a case like this ever again, or investigations like this again, because that was not okay. It was a bad, and this guy was definitely not alone. It's just so unfortunate that they couldn't link him to anybody else, and these people probably just found another puppet, or found somebody else to continue their sick little game, as it usually is in the child or human trafficking business. I want to know what you guys think. Comment below. Do you agree with the public or some of the people that he was not acting alone, which is where I'm leaning? Do you believe him saying that he did not unalive any of those kids? And do you believe that Michelle was a willing participant, or was she being forced to partner up with them? What do you think? Comment below. Anyways, that is all I have for you guys today. Let me know what you think down below in the comment section. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe, and I will see you guys in my next one. But until then, I hope to see you in the comment section. Bye.